This week's episode of Still Entitled was brought to you by ZipRecruiter.com. Are you hiring? Do you know where to post your job to find the best candidates? Posting your job in one place isn't enough to find quality candidates. If you want the perfect hire, you need to post your job on all the top job sites. And now you can. With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post your job to 100 plus job sites, including social media networks like Facebook and Twitter, all with a single click. Find candidates in any city, industry, nationwide. Just post once and watch your qualified candidates roll in with ZipRecruiter's easy-to-use interface. No more juggling emails or calls to your office. Quickly screen the candidates, rate them, and hire the right person fast. And right now, listeners of this podcast can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free by going to ZipRecruiter.com/AdamS. That's Adams, but ADAMS. Again, that's ZipRecruiter.com/AdamS. One more time, try it for free. Go to ZipRecruiter.com/AdamS. Thank them for sponsoring this show. And now on with that show.
Welcome to Still Entitled, the Adam Savage Project. I'm Will.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Norm.
Well, good morning,
Hey,
everybody.
gentlemen. We're recording this the day before it goes up.
That's a rarity.
I know.
Yes.
I've been traveling again.
Yeah. You just got back over the weekend. I know. Let's
140,000 miles this year?
140,000
You
miles
could almost
this
go to
year.
the moon with that.
Yeah.
Just one way, though.
Yeah, it's that's the rough estimation. There still might be another couple of trips before the year is out.
But we promise today is not about travel.
No, it's not
We've
about
done
travel.
that many times,
It's
and we
true.
will continue talking about travel.
Did you guys talk about the show last week?
We did a little bit talk about the show
Man.
last week. That was pretty good.
Norm, I just have to say, I know Joey probably said it, but
I said it too.
your talk about your trip to the Arctic, I heard it in practice, and I was almost in tears during the real thing. It was absolutely lovely.
Magnificent.
hilarious.
I can't wait to separate it out and put it up.
Yeah.
So that people can see it.
It was so well done.
Totally.
Not the rest of the show wasn't also awesome, but
Garbage.
I mean, it was all downhill
Breaking
from there.
your toys.
Yeah,
I'm sorry I broke your toys, Will.
yeah.
I broke the toys. That was me. I broke them.
It's okay. Hold on, I don't know which who's
I broke them. You
there
turned me
you go.
down
Okay,
or turned
there
me
you go.
I'm
Turned-
okay.
I heard you spent daylight savings time, an extra hour you spent it knolling Lego.
I received the Yellow Submarine Lego set. Actually, I bought 2 Lego submarine sets.
I didn't even know
The
this
Beatles' Yellow
existed.
Submarine.
Yeah,
Really?
I got it on. I had it pre-ordered, or we've been watching it for a few weeks. Anyway, I got 2 sets. I got one so that I can build it at home with my wife, Mrs. Don't Try This, and one that I can build here on Tested. Maybe you and I can build it together. Norm?
You know what? In the time between you showing me that set here at the cave and me setting up the podcast, I ordered it already. That's the curse of Lego having a VIP account, and I had enough VIP points.
Oh,
It
you
is
just
a
logged
it is a
in.
beautiful Lego kit. I will tell you that when you knoll it, it has some interesting features, which is I'm used to Legos almost always being bilaterally symmetrical, which means the number counts for little parts is always like 2, 4, 6, 8, 12.
Yep.
There's lots of 3s and 5s in this one because it's like a calico. It's the Yellow Submarine, so there's all different colors.
The thing
I
that
can't wait to build
bugs
this.
me the most about pre-sorting is not the number, how few sometimes of a certain piece. I love it when there are like 30 of one piece.
Like the Death Star, the Star Destroyer, Super Star Destroyer, when we had dozens and dozens and dozens.
When your
of,
pile is of 4 or 7,
Yeah.
as opposed to 30, you have a lot of small piles to make, and you can't stack them your way.
oh, I like the small piles. The small piles are very soothing to me.
I'll tweet this in a few minutes, but Mrs. Julia and I, this is us at the table last night.
Oh, you need a good surface for that.
We played Sushi Go last night.
What is Sushi Go?
Sushi Go is a board game. So it's a card game actually. But it's a German style card game where you basically you serve as, I think you're playing a sushi chef.
Sushi chef?
And you're
that's an interesting one. Sushi chef.
Sushi chef.
Sushi chef.
Actually, you're playing a customer ordering food and you're trying to get specific sets. So it works kind of like a game like Rummy, where you have to get, say, 3s and 2s, or you're making melds or streaks. But each type of sushi has a different scoring goal. So, for example, in order to score sashimi, you need 3 pieces of sashimi. In order to score nigiri, you just need 1. But if you want to double it, you can put some wasabi on it. And it ends up being this really fast to learn, but kind of deep German style board game that's actually quite good.
I just like
and it's very
saying
fast.
sushi chef.
I'm trying to think of like Sue sees
Sushi chef.
Sue sees sushi chef's sea shoes.
This is
like a sous chef.
We're in
Sue,
uncharted territory here,
Sushi
people.
chef, sea shoes.
You know what the most difficult tongue twister of all is, and this is disputed. I mean, because it's
Betty bought
subjective.
some butter, but she said this butter is
Now,
bitter,
that's
bitter,
easy.
bitter, bitter.
But she said, if I blend some butter better than the bitter butter, put it in my bitter batter, and make my bitter batter, better than the bitter butter, put it in a bitter batter. Now a bitter batter's better. That's not a tongue
There you go.
twister.
No, that's an
No,
auctioneering
this is
practice thing.
the sixth sheep's sick.
Well, I guess we have a show title now.
Wow. I just like saying buffalo, 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 buffalo,
Buffalo.
You know New York, you need New York. You know you need unique New York. Every now and then you can hear Stephen Colbert run through vocal exercises for verbal clarity.
Enunciation.
Enunciation. But
Put a
we're
pencil
getting
in your
off
mouth.
topic.
Yeah, we're way-
I want to talk about Westworld.
We're gonna finally talk about it.
We promised to talk about Westworld. Let's talk about Westworld. Let's do this again where we'll talk in some generalities and then we'll tell you to turn off your radio if
Yes.
you don't want to hear spoilers.
I think that's a good strategy overall.
So I am now, the 6th episode of Westworld aired last night.
God, really?
The adversary.
And Norm watched it. I have not, so I'm up to episode 5. You've watched episode 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's set up the premise. Let's set up the context of what the show is, why people are excited about it.
It is based on a legendary film, written and directed by author Michael Crichton, one of 2 films he ever directed.
Right. Of the Andromeda strain and
Jurassic
the ER
Park.
and Jurassic Park.
It's very much a proto Jurassic
Timeline and-
Park.
Absolutely. The
yeah,
original
kind of.
film starred Yul Brynner and Richard Benjamin. And it was about an amusement park that was the Old West, peopled by robots.
Yes.
And one of the robots goes rogue, and it's a long chase film.
It is the original Terminator.
Yeah,
there are
yeah.
many hallmarks of this. In addition to being a proto Jurassic Park, it is basically a rogue robot hunting down these 2 guests, and also it had the first use of, I believe, digitally altered, computer altered imagery.
It did.
in
It is the
film.
very first film to utilize. It is agreed that it's the first film to use CG in the film.
Yeah,
So-
not computer models, but
Right.
computer altered imagery in the vision of Yul Brynner, his
Like
pixelized
the
view.
overlay, right?
Yeah, how he see a heat map. It was Predator.
So-
Basically.
I do believe that the first digital character ever in a film is young Sherlock Holmes.
Yes,
Is the stained glass
full-
knight from
full
young
character,
Sherlock Holmes.
But the first
Wow.
digital representation of a real person is Peter Fonda in Future World.
well,
Today's Trivia Minute is brought to you by...
so anyway, so this is the original film is effectively a long term. You're right. It's the proto Terminator, and it's thrilling. It's great. Yul Brynner is terrifying as a robot cowboy as a murderous robot cowboy.
Who doesn't have to do much but say draw,
Yes.
and be imposing, which also pulls upon his role in the Magnificent Seven for that gunslinger persona.
So for me though, the original movie is more. It's almost as if a robot amusement park met like one of the Old West kind of tourist destinations, like Tombstone or Central City or something like that. There's no. They aren't trying to make a realistic experience. They're trying to make a real world. They're trying to make an amusement park ride. Whereas the modern incarnation of Westworld feels much more.
Fully immersive.
It actually feels like one of the open world video games that are very popular now, like GTA or Oblivion or Skyrim or something like that.
So go ahead, Adam.
Aside from the time travel aspect of Terminator, any film in which you have a human acting robot is a chance to play with all levels of allegory in terms of what it means to be conscious, what it means to be a person, and how we view the other. Blade Runner is, I think, one of the more sophisticated explorations of that in terms of it being, I think it can be viewed as a racial allegory. It can be viewed as a Christian allegory, a religious allegory. It can be viewed as a Buddhist allegory about what is consciousness. And I'm actually thrilled because Westworld seems to be rolling up its sleeves and diving about as deep into this iconography as I can possibly imagine.
So the modern show, HBO show, created by Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, who are writing partners. I believe also they're married.
Jonathan Nolan is Christopher Nolan's brother.
That's right.
And he's the
one
co-writer
with
of most of Christopher
many of his
Nolan's
movies.
projects.
The good ones.
Yeah.
Right. The ones he didn't wholly write on his own, and Christopher Nolan, and also the one without the accent. He doesn't have the British accent.
Oh, does Christopher Nolan have a British accent?
Christopher Nolan's fully British.
I did
Wait,
not know.
what? How does that work?
I don't know.
All right,
Oh.
moving on.
Anyway, this is a big thing. Like HBO wanted a Game of Thrones level success in a show, and they knew they had their fantasy, so they wanted something that's science fiction. And so this is their
Getting
big
both
sci-fi
major
show.
genres.
That's right. $100 million put in this series.
Wow,
They
really?
had to do reshoots. Shot a lot in Utah, so on location.
I can tell you, I've stood in many of the locations that it was shot when we filmed Duct Tape Canyon, because if you want to film that type of landscape, you can't go to the Grand Canyon. It's incredibly protected, and you're not allowed to hurt that landscape at all, which is great. Moab, Utah, which is where we filmed Duct Tape Canyon, and it's Monument Valley and really some of the most beautiful scenery I've ever seen in my whole life. And yeah, I've stood in several of the main locations in the
money
Westworld.
shows. Like it's an idea. The conceit of a immersive amusement park like run by robots. You could do that on a network show. You could do it on basic cable, but they put money on this, and
Simpsons
so
did it.
it's a grand scale. We're not in spoiler territory yet, but
Nope.
can we say the one big thematic difference between this show and the movie, in that who the protagonists are?
I don't know entirely that well. From what I've seen so far, that's not clear.
Will, you're on episode 2. You're still kind of figuring. They're still introducing main themes, like even main basic themes at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I would say let's talk about more generally and then get into that stuff later, because I've read some of the episode recaps and stuff for the later episodes.
I mean, I think it wouldn't be a spoiler to say that this show is deeper than the movie, in that you don't just see the story from a singular perspective, from the guest perspective.
That's absolutely true.
Oh, absolutely.
And that the robots are have as much agency and as much story on them as the humans.
So the three main groups are the creators of the park.
Yep.
And there's interesting dynamics that happen there. There's the people who come and pay money to come to this park, which is presented as an incredibly expensive, Disney World with guns and murder and sex.
And in the order of mid 5 figures per day to
it's
enjoy this park.
$40,000 a day base, but if you do the website and you want all the amenities, meaning like lodging and money and clothes, it gets up to about $250,000 a day in future currency, which they've said is in mid 21st century.
Oh, is that what they've said?
So
That's
with
what
inflation, that's like going to Disney World.
Before we dive too down this rabbit hole, I want to say from the front top line down, the casting is one of the just a phenomenal cast.
Oh.
Ed Harris as right now seems the villain is amazing. Anthony Hopkins giving master classes in acting just constantly. Evan Rachel Wood, who I've been a fan of since the amazing series with Seal Award and Billy Campbell Once and Again, where she plays a young girl and you see her going up through middle school into early high school. Phenomenal actress back then. In fact, one of the showrunners of that show was asked what one of his favorite takeaways of making Once and Again was, and he said, "I'll get to say later on that I worked early on with Evan Rachel Wood." She went on to star in the movie 13, which is another masterpiece. She's an incredible actress. And even by episode 2, you haven't seen, there's so much range she brings to this role. She's an incredible performer. And she's described this in interviews as acting Olympics.
I was going to say, like, just watching the first episode, which features a couple of, so the park goes through loops. The third set of characters are the hosts, the robots that make the city the city run. And the first episode does a good job of setting up the rules. Guests can't hurt other guests. They can do whatever they want to the robots.
They literally are not able to hurt other guests.
It's physically incapable.
The hosts aren't physically programmed.
Right.
In it.
Yeah.
And presumably they say you're not able to hurt anybody you're not supposed to.
Right. Yeah.
Which presumably means that the guests can't hurt other guests either. But that remains to be seen for me.
The hosts have mechanisms in place to prevent other guests, as they observe, to prevent guests from hurting other guests.
Right. The guests can do whatever they want to the hosts.
It's a fantasy world.
Like
including, and if you want to think on that one, like if you have a world populated by very realistic robots and you can do whatever you want, how the show has a fairly dim view of humanity, because what the guests do to the hosts is appalling.
Well, so I'm friends with a lot of game developers, and this is a thing. I think as people who played a lot of video games, Norm and I probably have a different perspective on this than you.
Yes.
Because what they've essentially done is put human faces on what are typically viewed as kind of thin characters of non-player characters in video games.
Right.
And the behavior that, say, Ed Harris exhibits in the first episode of the show, and even going forward from what I've seen so far, is exactly the kind of stuff that players do in games like World of Warcraft and Skyrim, and without any kind of thought or consequence about
We're moving
it.
into spoiler territory as we talk about that character. But you're right. I think the producers, the showrunners, the writers of the show have been very forthcoming in saying that they look to video games as their Bible, and how. And it's relatable. It's how the viewers of the show can relate, and it's the first thing people talk about when they talk about, oh my god, this is just like that video game, or this is, I've never thought of the video game characters like this, thinking those things to a logical extreme.
To be clear, when you're playing a game like Grand Theft Auto,
Right.
you walk around. This is probably a bad example because I don't think they actually do this in GTA, but in a lot of open world games, the non-player characters will have loops that they run through. So they have a series of activities that they do every day. They have dialogue interactions with other non-player characters.
Right. And you can interrupt these loops and
Yep.
join in, and
they can trigger a
within
quest.
parameters,
They can
yeah.
approach you and try to get you to trigger a quest. And literally the only difference between GTA and Westworld at that level of conception is that, GTA happens in 2D on a screen, and Westworld happens in the real world with robots.
Yep.
And it made me profoundly uncomfortable after playing those games.
Yeah, no, I can totally imagine. Also, another main actor that's in the show is Jeffrey Wright.
Yeah.
Who got his first big start as Basquiat in the amazing Julian Schnabel film, which is actually incredible.
You may recognize him also in the Bond films.
He
the
plays
most recent
Felix.
Bond. He plays Felix. He also,
okay.
in Source Code, plays a very similar computer scientist with the glasses.
He's wonderful.
Yeah.
He's an actor I think of, I put him in a category with Oliver Platt as a truly, really rounded, amazing character actor who's never fully gotten their due. He's never really hit it big. I think of them both as slightly under-recognized by Hollywood.
Tandy Newton.
Tandy Newton is
Oh my
a
God.
fearless warrior.
Holy hell.
Everyone who plays, every host.
Okay, I'd like to move into spoiler
Let's
territory.
do it.
Okay, so we're now. If you want to watch it fresh, go right ahead and turn off the podcast right now. I think we'll try and move somewhat linearly through the episodes.
Let's do it. Let's try.
I don't think you're going to lose a whole lot. Like I
No,
feel like this
I
is
don't
more
think
about
so, yeah.
characters and setting than plot.
So one of the things that I find really invigorating about this show on the broad general level is you're right. The characters are in three buckets: people who run the park, the visitors, and the hosts, who are the robots. And you spend a lot of time in only two of those worlds. You spend a lot of time in the background of the park, on the underside of it, in the mechanics, and then you spend a lot of time in the park. But you know nothing of what the actual quote unquote real world looks like as far as episode 5 goes, and
They
probably
just
episode
allude
6.
to it. They say there's no poverty, there's no sickness.
It's a world of plenty.
It's a world of plenty, which is why this world of fantasy needs to exist.
And you get tiny glimpses at the technology available. For example, in the second episode, when they introduce two visitors, they go through the outfitting phase. They show you the futuristic white plastic sci-fi rooms with the clothes. And then they go into a bar, and all of a sudden the bar is a train, and the train is about to arrive at the station.
It's a pretty
and
cool kind of Disney-fied
it's
magic
very,
trick.
Totally.
very
Yeah.
Disney.
Choose your hat. White hat, black hat, Paragon, villain. Yeah.
But one of the things that occurs a lot is that, as you can imagine, if hosts can do whatever they want to if guests can do whatever they want to the hosts, then the hosts require lots of repair.
Yeah.
So there's lots of scenes of the hosts being reconfigured for the next day. So they shot up, they're bleeding, they have parts cut off,
or
of them,
swapped out wholesale.
or swapped out wholesale. Yes, and when they're in the background, when all the hosts, the robots of the show, are in the underside of the park, they're completely naked.
Yeah.
And so you have every single actor who plays a host has many scenes in which they're completely naked and
deadpan.
And there's a way in which the show does. One of the problems I have with television and movies is a phrase I came across recently online, which is, someone wrote, can we please stop confusing sexualizing with sexy? And just as a brief aside, I'll say I tried to watch The Shallows with Blake Lively because I heard it was a well-made film. It is not, and it is just it's literally like 2 hours about the crack of her ass. I mean, it's just like, it's ridiculous how much it just looks at her boobs constantly and tries to make a shark movie around it. And this, like, I can't stand this kind of thing.
Right. This is why I bounced off of Game of Thrones, frankly.
Like, and
because of the weird sexposition stuff that they do in that
let's
show.
Let's talk about
constantly.
sexy. Real sexy is something like, and this is old, and I give my age here, but like The Big Easy is a sexy movie. There's almost, I don't think there's any nudity in that film, but it's two characters falling in love, and it's sexy, and that's awesome.
But there's also a third difference. There's nudity, and there's sexy, and then there's sexualizing. And this does nudity for storytelling.
This does nudity without sexualizing it, and it's not sexy, and that's jarring to see.
Well,
Tandy Newton has entire scenes in which she is completely naked, and there's also there's dicks in this movie, like all over the place. You haven't even seen
nothing but all the way. Well,
it's dehumanizing, but that's the point.
Yes,
the point is really to make them not human.
And it's very. I find it like the second episode. There's a scene where the two visitors who come in have very different goals. One is there to shoot up some people, or maybe just to see what the Old West was like.
Prince Caspian.
And the other there is to go full hedonism.
McPoyle.
And they have names?
No. Those are the actors that we're the most known for. Okay. William and Logan are the names.
Sorry, thanks, Norm. But between that and in the first episode, there's a presumed rape scene with Ed Harris and Rachel Wood, and like at that point, I wasn't sure whether I was watching a show that was about the sexualization of violence in media, which is what it seems like it's probably going to be,
right?
Or if it was a show that was using the conversation about sexualization of violence in media to show sexualization and violence in the media.
Yeah, no, right. Yeah, you wonder which side of that. Well, there's also like, it's also could be viewed as a diatribe on capitalism, on exploitation of workers. I mean, there's again,
and
so
also
many layers.
It sets up that character Dolores, spelled with O, to be the hero, because just like in Game of Thrones, very first episode of Game of Thrones, which I don't know if you guys watch, you have an intense rape scene that Daenerys goes through, and there are a lot of people who critique that, and like the Game of Thrones is not supposed to be about this, and then it turns out she's like the most powerful character, and it comes full circle for that. Talking about Ed Harris, though, and I think it is a little bit of a spoiler because the show sets it up that he is the Man in Black. He is the Yul Brynner analog.
You think he's going to be the Yul Brynner.
You think he's the renegade robot.
Very quickly.
But right in the first episode, they turn that expectation upside down, and he's one of the VIP guest.
Well,
and we don't know whether we really, really don't know whether he's ultimately a good guy or a bad guy, or how he is going to propel the plot.
I'm going to go ahead and make my prediction now based on 2 episodes, and you can tell me why I'm wrong. But he is the guy. He's the completionist. He's the guy who plays the video game and seeks out every side quest and every piece of content and absorbs the entire game. Right,
he does say as much, and I think that is actually, it's a good.
My point is that that's neither a force for good nor evil. It's he's the guy who goes out and finds his own weird goal on top of this other game.
There's purpose on top of that.
You think? I think he's probably dying of cancer. He's going to kill himself at the end of the show.
Oh, fascinating. No, I think it goes. So one of the things that I did read about Westworld is that they shut production down for a significant period of time in order to make sure they knew precisely how the whole series would lay out
of the whole thing. Okay,
right, and they didn't want to get into a situation or a perceived situation like Lost. The way people perceive Lost went, where bounced back and forth between a science fiction show and a soap opera, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, I mean,
all the complaints,
everything that goes on for a long time and isn't of a fixed length to begin with.
So have they said how many episodes they're planning to make?
I believe this season is 10 or 12 episodes, but the season 2 has not been
announced, and so they don't know whether. So
they wrote it for one season for it to be
this is
encapsulated thing.
Yeah,
and HBO did come in and stop production a year and a half ago at around episode 6. So they did reshoots, but everything after episode 6 has their renewed focus in their story.
So I'm fascinated because I remember when the first press came out, I thought, sounds like it could be a nightmare,
right?
And then. Honestly, I'm on episode 5 and I've loved every bit of it. Now, Julia, my wife, and I are watching it. I'm watching it again with her.
It's dense. It is a dense show, not just in the dialogue and the scenes. Every piece of dialogue seems like it matters, but also in the edits, the way they edit it. And even just the just the allegories. The piano playing robot is.
The piano playing robot, the player piano,
Yep.
the player piano that plays without a program. I mean, all of these wonderful, wonderful bits. The way that you get to see the characters go through their loops, and you see that while you see the same loop repeatedly in many different scenarios, it's always a little bit different.
That's the incredible acting chat. Like, how does Evan Rachel Wood bump into drop the can at the same place in the same? I mean,
so let me actually, I'll give you one that's going to be a little bit of a spoiler for you. But with Tandy Newton, there's a sequence later on. I think it's episode 3 or 4, where they keep on pulling her offline to adjust her aggressiveness because customers are turning her down.
One. Yeah.
Oh, so they keep on running her through, and she keeps on like, okay. And it's basically the script is telling Tandy Newton, play a hooker, but now play her with slightly more aggression. Now play her with less aggression. Now play her with more emotional acuity.
And the fact that
it's the same lines. Right. The amazing thing is she's delivering the same lines with different intonation and different body language. Yeah. And it's astounding to watch.
Wonderful.
And it falls into the logic of the world where these robots have their dialogue pre-programmed, but then they also are able to be creative in mixing their dialogue. The reason they chat with each other is to practice their small talk. And the reason... One of the mechanisms that you can do with these loops, and remember, Jonathan Nolan wrote Memento, which is also like a Groundhog Day-like loop.
Just loops, yeah.
Is that you can screw around with time. You can completely screw around with what you're showing to the viewer. There's one scene, I think you might have seen this, Adam, where Tandy Newton, she starts to remember about the maintenance people. And so she struggles, and before she gets shut off, before she goes to sleep, she draws one of the maintenance people that she
draw
remembers.
like a dot matrix printer with
that
would be amazing.
Like a spacesuit, right?
Oh my God, I would love to see that. It's like when the Bionic Woman changed the tire, she was like,
that's like Chappie. Yeah.
Sorry.
But then you think that, okay, wow, she's finally breaking through. She's going to remember who these people who repair her. And then she hides.
She goes to hide it under the
floorboard, and she pulls up the floorboard, and there are like dozens of these drawings that her past loops have gone through and drawn.
Wow. Oh yeah.
And then she realizes that it's futile because like
she's been here.
So I mean, like at the core of it, this is about dehumanizing people and free will, right? The humans are clearly the monsters,
right?
They're dehumanizing repeatedly, and then the question is, are the robots in a position that they're going to develop free will and presumably go on a murderous rampage? And it seems like that's inevitable if it's a one season show.
I think that's the point. Like, they want to show the progress of these robots in two different ways. Tandy Newton, probably a violent revolution, and then for Dolores, a more self-realizing revolution in terms of how they liberate themselves.
And Dolores, to be clear, is Evan Rachel Wood, and she's ostensibly the star of the show. She is the narrative linchpin that joins all the different narratives together so far.
With anyone else, with any other production side, I would say, yeah, that's absolutely going to be true. But HBO has a really long history of putting somebody on the poster and putting him front and center and then killing him off at the end of the first season.
Absolutely. Now, so there's something else that happened when I started watching this weekend a second time with Julia is, and I had this too with Breaking Bad. Watching episode 1 of Westworld, I was astounded by how much storytelling they get done in that first episode. So I sort of binged and watched the first 5 episodes while I was traveling this week in New York and Connecticut and Boston and everywhere else.
Were you traveling? I hadn't heard.
So you finish 5 episodes, you've got this sort of whole melange in your head of what happened, and then I rewatched the first episode, and I was like, holy cow, I can't believe how much territory they cover in this one 58-minute episode, and it doesn't feel like they're shoveling a lot of narrative past you and giving you tons of exposition.
The best part is they also do it without going the logical way of telling you the guest perspective. They save that for episode 2.
Right.
When the walking through the guest orientation process, the way that you can just onboard information. Yeah. That's not in the first episode.
And it feels
drop you in.
It also feels quite non-linear. They're bouncing you between storylines, and there's fan theories that they may even be bouncing you back and forth through decades of time.
I subscribe to those.
You do?
In episodes I haven't seen yet?
No. Even so,
There's
and-
a fan theory that
Well, before we spoil Will, you get the choice here. You get to make a choice. Neo get like Neo. You get to.
I'm not taking the red
or
pill.
blue
I know
pill.
how this works.
Do
I know what
you
happens when you take the red pill.
Want to
Norm.
know the big prevailing fan theory? Because on the meta discussion level, there are now articles talking about are fan theories and is this level of like Netflix releases all their shows at once. There are no theories. There's no week to week. HBO, you have to do week to week. Even Game of Thrones, you have the books to go to. Like not since Lost did you have this kind of 7 days between an episode, internet discussion, this deconstruction, and all that media. Does it ruin a show? Does it ruin your own enjoyment? I know you like binging.
I don't like binging.
Oh, you don't
Remember,
like
I'm
binging.
an
No, he
anti-binger.
doesn't. He's the anti-binger.
I
He
wrote
gives-
a thing about not
Yeah,
binging because
right,
I think binging. Like
I wish I had Will's self-control.
So I watched the first 2 episodes one after the other. I haven't had time to watch TV in the last couple of weeks because we had other stuff going. But I'm in a position now where I can go back and watch, and I'd like to have a day or two
To
at
digest.
least so I can think about it and then roll back and watch the like if there's like the second episode I'd watched it before, I watched it again last night. I'm gonna go back and pick some certain bits of that because I want to see like the interaction between, I can't remember the programmer's name, but he's the guy from Hunger Games. He played Beto in Hunger Games.
Yeah, he's one of the Hemsworths, right?
No.
The security guard is the third Hemsworth.
Oh yeah, the third Hemsworth. Boy, they're a handsome family.
We call it Thor bro.
It's
It's the second Thor bro.
Do you think they all work out together?
They're the 20 teens is Baldwins. Which one's going to turn out to be a neocon? We'll find out.
That's great.
So it's he pulls Evan Rachel Wood off by herself, and something like clearly foreshadows that something is up with what's happening with her and what he's done.
Oh, Jeffrey Wright.
Yeah, you know what,
It's
Bernard.
a Jeffrey Wright.
Yeah.
Bernard. Yeah.
Bernard.
He pulls her out and does the whole the debrief by himself.
Yep.
She has her clothes on, so you know something's weird.
Yeah.
And at the end, he tells her to erase all memory of that conversation. And I don't remember where I was going with this now, but the point is, I want to go back and watch that bit again.
Yeah,
That's where I
yeah.
was going with. I want to go back and watch that again because I feel like there's something important there.
So would you like to
that I
hear this
probably-
prevailing
would you-
fan
would
theory?
Let's hear the prevailing
Okay.
fan theory.
And-
Blow it for me.
And you know,
This is the double- hold on.
I don't want this. But
Double spoilers.
double spoiler. And by the way,
triples.
I don't want this spoiler to be true. I don't want this fan
So
theory
there's
to
a
be
whole,
true. It bothers
and
me.
we will have a whole separate podcast about
Is Anthony Hopkins really a robot?
No, well,
No.
we'll have a whole separate podcast about whether spoilers and discussions, like what the relationship between the viewer and the storytellers are when the storytellers also read the comments. Like that's a whole deep thing. So the prevailing theory, and it's been widely, it's like 50-50, 46-43 right now, is that
That's too real, Norm.
Norm has always done the homework. This is really
By the
clear.
way, guys, you should vote today.
yeah,
Please
please do.
Yes.
For the love
Vote.
of God, go vote.
Go vote.
Speaking of 46-43.
Is that the storyline that you just got introduced to, William and Logan, is actually set 30 years ago, and their interactions with Dolores are in the past, and that one of them becomes the Man in Black, becomes Ed Harris.
That's super interesting.
Yeah, I don't want that to be true. I don't like that story.
I don't-
And here's the evidence. Here's the evidence. The most prevailing evidence is the logos. If you look at the Westworld logo, where Williams goes through orientation, it's
Yeah.
a distinctly different logo than the show logo, the modern day logo, which you see with Anthony Hopkins and Bernard. And in reshoots, the most compelling evidence is that HBO actually went back and redid those scenes to change the logo.
Whoa.
And to establish that maybe one logo is of a different time. It's not
It
just
seems
a
like it would be
continuity
really
error.
easy to fix and digitally in post.
It feels intentional.
Wow.
That's the
Wow.
biggest evidence so far.
So you basically, there's meta evidence about the production of this TV show
Yeah.
that indicates
Which is
a
why-
potential storyline inside the show.
Which is why the whole discussion about whether discussions
So-
and spoilers ruin the show for people.
Which one is it that they think is Ed Harris?
Most people think
the black
William.
hat or the white hat.
The
Most
white
people
hat.
think that William becomes the story is as much about Dolores' self-discovery and awakening as it is his turn from white hat to black
Oh,
hat.
but you know what? Narratively, it's more interesting if his friend becomes Ed Harris, and I'll explain why.
Yeah.
Even though I still don't want this to be true. It would posit that William's friend Logan is really the asshole. He is, I guess
He's the troll.
They
He's the
describe
online
to
troll.
you. They
Yeah, he
describe
is.
to you the two polar ends of the visitor's morality. William is the one who has a moral compass and doesn't want to just rape or kill everything. Logan is the one who does, and actively does kill lots and like screws everything.
He's the reason that team damage is not on by default in online shooters.
And he's one who understands the game. He says in the show, "Oh, an Easter egg. This is a great mission to go on."
And so the idea that he would become Ed Harris posits that there's a moment in which instead of just becoming a sort of indulgent dick, he actually has his own consciousness shifted. As he's claiming William will have happened to him, his own consciousness is shifted by the game, and he desires to go deeper. I can see that being.
And I know a lot of people, I subscribe to the Logan as Men in Black theory. I think a lot of people want William to be the Man in Black because then it explains why.
What's the story of a good man gone bad?
Good man, which is dramatically interesting, and also his reconnection
However, but
with Dolores.
that's the story of Breaking Bad, so they might have actually done the opposite. They might take you on a separate reverse arc.
Here's my theory.
Here's Norm's theory.
I'm laying it all down right now.
Is this an original fan
Can
theory?
we do a graphic of Norm's theory coming up on the screen? Norm's theory.
The theory is the multiple layers of deception. William and Logan go into the park 30 years ago. They discuss later on that Logan's company wants to buy the park, that the park is suffering.
Hence the logo change.
Hence the logo change. Now it's a Delos company. William falls in love with Dolores, as we'll eventually see. I believe that to be true. And I think there's going to be a great tragedy where Dolores almost reaches her point of self-realization and fails 30 years ago, and William dies. Now, the thing that people have kind of dropped hints about, maybe this is true, is that when you have sex with a robot in the park, and if you look at the terms of service in the legalese, they own all your biological. They own everything.
So it's like 23andMe.
Kind of.
So
yeah.
they own your.
Half of it,
they
at
own
least.
your DNA.
Yeah.
So people are speculating that people go to the park and donate their DNA. They use that DNA to construct a new host.
Oh man, that makes
What?
And you have Rodrigo
means
Santoro, who's a host robot. He's the bandit.
Okay.
He looks a lot like Logan.
I think that's a stretch.
That might be a stretch.
Wow. Interesting.
I know. I want to
final
know.
theory?
I want to know who has to clean out the robots. Ew.
One final theory.
One final theory.
Sorry.
Bernard is a robot.
You think Bernard's a robot?
No, there's no way Bernard's a robot.
No, you don't put robots in charge of robots unless you want things to end badly.
I think Bernard is a co-founder of the park, and he's Arnold.
You think Bernard's Arnold?
Bernard is Arnold.
Who's
So
Arnold?
You will find out in
Look,
episode
among
4.
the other things that are going on is I think at the end of towards the end of episode 4, there's a lovely conversation between Robert Ford, Anthony Hopkins' character, and the woman whose name is
The QA woman?
yes.
Yes.
And,
Denise?
Bernard's.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
Bernard. Okay.
And Nerdwriter did a wonderful, wonderful video on YouTube, which I've watched twice now, of a detailed breakdown of the scene from episode 4 of Hopkins acting. And they really take you through how a great actor layers in narrative to lines, and they show how Hopkins, with these incredibly long pauses, runs through multiple emotional arcs, multiple decision trees in his head, to add a level of narrative complexity and malevolence and fascinating storyline to what is still a wonderfully written scene, but
In the
Hopkins
words not
deepens
said.
it times 5. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So the other thing from the second episode that I wanted to go back and watch again is the scene with Anthony Hopkins and the young boy who's a visitor.
Who's clearly him as a young boy.
It's him as a young boy. It is actually
Because they're dressed the same.
and
It's clearly he's a host created to be Hopkins as a young
And
boy.
that's a
I'm
perfect
totally
guess.
sure of that.
You think
Because
he's a
it
host?
is-
I assumed he was a visitor
No,
based
I
on
know.
what he says.
He's a host.
It's revealed in episode 6 that he is Anthony Hopkins as a young boy, created by his partner as a gift to him, and the face opens up and everything.
It's
that's pretty fucked up.
shush. Stop. It's but anyway,
You chose
he's
the red
dressed
pill, Adam.
precisely.
You chose the red pill.
So I think that I have gone. Yeah, I think I've gone through all the stuff I wanted to talk about.
How fucked up do you have to be to go hang out with past you?
Well, if you look at
It's called having kids, man.
If you're into Westworld, EW does a great weekly interview right after the show airs with the showrunners, where they give you little bits of insights, tidbits about their decision making, and specifically about this scene where why would Anthony Hopkins keep a version of his family as a kid? It was his favorite memory. It's like looking at an old photograph. And if you could have a conversation of yourself and an old
Like
photograph,
Robert Downey Jr. in Civil War.
what would you do? Well, yes. And so this is their logical conclusion. Like, if you could talk to your young self
Yeah.
and
What
have
would you
conversations,
say?
what would you
It's all
say?
I'd ever do. I'd just
and
be
what would you
talking to
learn
me.
about yourself in that process?
Maybe. Yeah. So therein lies the end of our Westworld
goodness.
spoiler cast.
Part one?
Part one of Westworld
I think
spoiler
this will
cast.
probably we'll keep checking in. I
Yeah,
hope.
let's keep checking in.
If you want more, our friend Annalie Newitz does
Yeah.
a weekly podcast also discussing Westworld on Ars Technica. So
We got to have Annalie on this podcast.
We have discussed-
and we got to go on hers too.
yeah,
Okay.
it's going to happen.
We're going to make that happen before the end of Westworld, okay?
Laura Hudson's also doing a really good recap series on
good.
Vulture. Is the other good one? Is the one I like.
It's exciting and it's lovely to be diving deep into a show with this much complexity and a different take than I see in a lot of normal television.
I usually don't participate in this side.
Yeah, no,
because
me
usually
too.
I come in late.
Me, absolutely,
Like I
I'm
didn't.
the same.
I still haven't watched Lost. Don't tell Lloyd. Is there anything else? New on TV new this fall that you guys have watched that's been good?
I watched again the Netflix special Ali Wong Baby
Oh my
Cobra,
God.
which is
Oh, really?
comedian Asian American comedian Ali Wong did her special, her first comedy special.'s been a stand-up comedian for 15 years
From San Francisco.
from San Francisco, and she did it 7 months pregnant.
Yep.
And
Holy hell!
it's a real tour de force.
Amazing. She's
yeah,
like right
it's a
about
real
my
tour de
age.
force.
Yeah.
It is
Went to high
filthy.
school over here, and yeah,
It
so
is
good.
filthy, filthy, filthy. I mean, not safe for anything. It's really impressive. I watched it a second time while I was traveling. I really dug it. I've been watching tons of Samantha Bee. She's been my spirit animal during this election. And also, you know what? I want to give a shout out. Seth Meyers has his talk show's been sitting there under the radar, kind of going in the background.
That's what happens with late night.
It does, but he has bumped up with this segment on his talk show called A Closer Look that has done its own kind of examination in a field crowded with John Oliver and The Daily Show and Samantha Bee and everybody else. Seth has really carved out this lovely bit of real comedic and yet deep examination into the election process, which I'm enjoying.
You can see the through line from that to like the thing that he used to do with Amy Poehler, the really bit.
Yeah.
That was the increasing, but
Yes.
this is a little bit more real and it's quite good.
And I fully get that I'm exhibiting my full politics by talking about the very people that I'm watching, and so be it.
Just vote.
Please, for the love of God, vote.
Just vote.
It's really
It's not too
important.
late unless it's after 8 o'clock on the West Coast. In which
Your
case it
vote
probably
matters.
is. Yeah.
All right.
Thanks,
All right.
guys.
We'll see you
Norm,
next
anything
week.
on the site? Anything good?
Yeah, we have some footage finally from our trip to Australia. I think we can say we
Oi!
visited Peter Jackson's amazing prop collection,
Oh, wow.
and we'll have
Peter
some
Jackson has
videos.
one of the world's most impressive collection of movie props and memorabilia, and we got to look at a few really amazing pieces.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. See you guys next week.
Bye, guys.
Bye.